It is 11 o'clock and we have our newest update on Tropical Storm Erin, which is today showing signs of strengthening. The winds since 5 o'clock this morning to the 11 o'clock update have gone up by 10 miles per hour, now estimated to be around 60 miles per hour. The storm is moving pretty swiftly west at about 17 miles per hour, but I just want to take a second to point out this satellite imagery. One of the things that we're seeing on satellite data this morning is we're starting to get more of this kind of cylindrical look in Erin right now with some pretty good convection right around the center of it. Also, the National Hurricane Center in their update is noting a little bit of central dense overcast right over the center of the storm. These are all signs that we're starting to see Erin taking off in momentum, speed, organization, the structure of the storm looking a little bit healthier today than what it did yesterday. So it's no surprise that the winds on this storm are starting to go up. The pressure has also dropped a little bit. It's now down to 999 millibars, which is not overall impressive, but it is a consistent drop a little bit in the last few hours from where it was earlier. There are also some of areas of convection or a little feeder bounds along the northwestern side of it. On the eastern side, you don't see that same action happening, and that's because there is still the slightest amount of dry air on the eastern side of Erin right now. But again, winds are up to 60 miles per hour. Those tropical storm force winds are extending 60 miles outside the center of the storm. And over the next 24 hours, it's moving over an area with warm ocean waters and very little wind shear. This is going to allow for Erin to progressively strengthen, have the opportunity to organize better. And by tomorrow at this time, we're going to be looking at Hurricane Erin on the map. So again, tropical storm right now. Winds are up to 60 miles per hour. Yesterday at this time, the winds were just about 45 to 50 miles per hour. So we've seen a jump up in those wind speeds, and it's expected to become a hurricane by tomorrow morning. I'm actually going to pause that forecast traffic so you can see here. Friday, 8 a.m., 75 mile per hour hurricane. Then let's push this out into the weekend. And after we get past tomorrow morning, it's going to encounter an area with a little bit more wind shear. So it may not strengthen as quickly tomorrow afternoon as what we expect it to strengthen over the next 24 hours today. But then over the weekend, gradually getting into an area with much warmer ocean waters, not a whole lot of wind shear. So we do expect this to become still a major hurricane by the end of the weekend. So Category 2 north of the northern Leeward Islands and the Virgin Islands early this weekend for the center of the storm. But the effects of this system as it grows in size and strength are going to be felt well outside the center. So in terms of impacts already this weekend, we're going to be looking at, even though the center of Erin won't move over them, some of the outer rain bands with heavy rainfall could move over the northern Virgin Islands, northern Leeward Islands. Even Puerto Rico could feel some of the outer effects of Erin. In addition to that, large swells will be reaching those islands. That could lead to dangerous surf and also a life-threatening threat of rip currents in addition to that. What I want to point out with this cone of uncertainty is that as we get into early next week, this path of Erin starts to shift direction. It's no longer moving kind of west-northwest, it's moving more to northwest. And that all has to do with the steering currents of this particular system. Remember, I'll tell you in almost every single one of these live streams that we do, tropical systems don't know where to go by themselves. Like, they don't really have a steering wheel. It's almost like bumper cars. They're getting pushed in a direction by a larger feature in the atmosphere. And in this case, it's going to be a larger subtropical ridge that we're talking about, and I'll show you that in a minute. Air moisture map here. Let me go back to that air moisture map and zoom in a little bit. I just want to show you, there's Erin, all of its high moisture right around the center of it. Of course, well in advance of it, we've got pretty dry air, but just on the eastern side, it's just been battling the slightest bit of dry air right there. So that's why you're not seeing the convection blowing up as much on the eastern side as it is on the western side. That's kind of one of the reasons why we're looking at that. Also, I want to show you where the storm is in relation to the water temperatures. Okay, yesterday at this time, the center of Erin was right about here. So it was just starting to get into that 80-degree water, and now we're seeing it well into the low 80s. Remember, tropical systems get their fuel, their energy off the release of latent heat as we pull in those warm ocean waters and it's condensing. There's that latent heat in the equation. And so when we look at Goldilocks and the Three Bears for tropical systems, what does it take for storms to form and get better strengthened? We look at warm ocean waters. When it's 80 degrees, that helps them develop. But when it warms to like 84, 85, 86, especially 86, that's kind of a sweet spot for rapid intensification. The warmer the waters, the more energy for these storms, the more potential energy. So when we start to move over warmer and warmer waters progressively, that's one of those ingredients that can come together for these storms to strengthen and get better organized. They like those warm ocean waters a lot. What they don't like is wind shear. It doesn't have a lot of wind shear it's dealing with right now, but after we get past tomorrow morning, it may encounter a little bit more wind shear. You kind of see that northwest of where it is right now, and that could help to limit how quickly this thing is strengthening. We don't expect high wind shear. And let me just show you how wind shear impacts tropical systems, okay? This is the normal flow of a hurricane. It's like if you had a cake that was actually a hurricane, you cut the cake in half, and you're looking at just half the cake, or you buy half of a cake from the grocery store. You're looking at the layers inside. Well, this is the layers inside of a hurricane. The winds are coming in at the bottom, they're going up. We like that nice symmetrical flow at the top, and then they go out. When we introduce wind shear, look how lopsided our cake slice looks of the hurricane. It disrupts the normal flow of a tropical system. So when these systems get sheared off, it just disrupts their circulation a lot. So tropical systems do not like wind shear. Wind shear can help to limit them strengthening. It can help to tear them apart in general. We like wind shear because that means they're not going to become as strong. Well, Erin is not dealing with a lot of wind shear now, but by tomorrow afternoon through early Saturday, maybe slightly more wind shear. I don't think it's going to be it's not going to knock it out. It's not going to make it dissipate or anything like that. It's just going to limit the rate of growth and the rate of strengthening. All right, let's talk about where this thing's going to go in the steering currents, because this is a big player. I want to show you spaghetti models, and I'm going to zoom into where they are over the next 48 hours. You see we're in pretty good consensus here. It's moving west, kind of west-northwest, but then we start to see some deviations or differences in these tracks. Erin's ultimately going to get steered by a bigger weather feature. We'll show you in just a second. Some of the models don't have that kick to the north happening until north of Puerto Rico. Others have more of a gradual curve to the north, starting as it's going over just north of the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and also Puerto Rico. Some of them curve it, a few outliers, well earlier. What we want to happen to limit any impact to the United States is, of course, that earlier curve to the north. The earlier it curves to the north, the further out it is at sea, the less likelihood that we're going to see a deviation long term. But look at how much of a spread we have in the models early next week. This is kind of larger than normal uncertainty. We see model solutions. Remember, these spaghetti models are showing the center of Erin. It's not how large the storm's going to be, where the impact's going to be felt. But we have models as far east as Bermuda. That's this little tiny dot on the screen. That's Bermuda right there. We also have models and a few outliers that are showing some of these model tracks that are several hundred miles further to the west. And I'll actually put a measurement on this because I think this is a great, look at that. That's a pretty large spread in weather model data for being 7 days out. It's a little larger than usual. So we have over 450 miles of spread in the models showing where the center of Erin will go middle of next week. This is Thursday morning that they're showing it. Well, look at this. That's less than the spread of the distance between the closest one to the United States and the actual coastline. So what the point of that is right now this cone of uncertainty and kind of the model consensus is, yeah, this thing's probably headed several hundred miles away from the U.S. coast, closer to Bermuda than it is to us. But if we see a slight deviation or change again by tomorrow at this time, and then the next day, every little wiggle westward in that curve to the north changes what the outcomes could be 5 days from now. So Are we clear in the United States for the coast? No. It just right now still looks like the model consensus is what's more likely to be a solution is the center of Erin will be several hundred miles offshore, but it could be a several hundred mile across storm. So that means swells, the rip currents, the rough surf, that is in play for the east coast of the United States. And if Erin were to take a track even further west along some of those westward solutions, well, could we see some of the outermost rain bands impacting the Outer Banks? It's possible, but today is Thursday. We're talking about something a week from now in the tropics, and there's a long way to go between here and there. So this is just the time to be watching the system closely. It is not the time to be panicking or saying with certain that something is or isn't going to happen. I just want you to be aware if you're on the U.S. East Coast, not really Florida, Georgia, but more likely the Outer Banks of North Carolina. This is something we're going to watch, right? We're going to watch it really closely. We know that there's going to be the implications of rip currents and rough surf, but will there be a nudge to the west where we could be dealing with more impacts than that? You know, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just not the more likely solution at this point. Why are we looking at the spread in models? Well, tropical systems are steered by larger features in the atmosphere. And in this particular case, it's this subtropical ridge, which models are trying to get a handle on. Is this ridge going to be stronger and push it a little further west? Or is that ridge going to be a little bit weaker, and would that be positioned a little further east and allow Erin to be steered a little bit sooner? There's also another little upper level trough at play within all of this. So it's like a ballet or tap dance or an orchestra piece of a lot of different things going on. How is that ballet actually going to finish? Could have many different endings. So those are the steering currents with Erin. So again, just to kind of recap, Erin has strengthened this morning. It is looking more impressive on satellite data. It's moving over warmer ocean waters and doesn't have a lot of wind shear that it's battling today, so we do expect further intensification throughout Thursday into tonight, into tomorrow morning, and by tomorrow morning at this time, we will have our first hurricane of the Atlantic season on our hands. Now that's a little bit lower, or slower rather, than our average first hurricane in the Atlantic. We averaged the first hurricane around August 11th, which was Monday. We're a couple days after that, but what is interesting is that we do expect this further intensification to a major hurricane this weekend. The average first major hurricane in the Atlantic is not until September 1st, so we'd be a little bit ahead of average before that, even though we're behind average in terms of the first hurricane forming in the Atlantic. So we know that there will be some impacts to the northern Leeward Islands, the Lesser Antilles, if you will, and also the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. The center of Erin not expected to move over any of those, but they're going to have rough surf, rip currents, and the threat of some of the outermost rain bands that could bring some heavy rainfall to those areas as well. And then this is something we're watching for, that curve to the north. When is it going to happen? One of the other things I want to point out is that now that Erin is getting a little bit closer and the interest for land over the next 5 days have increased because it's closer to us, hurricane hunters will now begin flying into Erin later on today. They are scheduled for their first flight. I believe they're going to be leaving at 8 o'clock tonight. I'm going to go check as I'm speaking and make sure that there's not been any update to that schedule versus what I had seen yesterday. So yes, it looks like we're going to see our first flight into Erin actually at, let's see, Flight 1, NOAA 43, and that flight is leaving at 0Z on the 15th. So that's still 8 o'clock tonight. So once we get past 8 o'clock tonight, it looks like we've got, over the next 24 hours, we're going to have every 6 hours a new flight going in. We're going to have one at 8 o'clock tonight, 2 a.m. tonight, it's going to leave again. And then first thing tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., there's actually 2 separate Hurricane Hunter planes that are going into Erin. They're going to have the 42 and the Teal 75. They have a lot of different planes that they look at. They're also investigating whether or not they're going to send in the radar planes in that have special radars on board. We get satellite image, which is like a picture from space, but when you actually send radar in one of these Hurricane Hunter planes, some of them are have on board special radar systems. They're actually looking at what is the eye wall structure, if it does have an eye wall at that point, what are the rainfall rates, and it's just all the more information that we get is great. So that first plane coming in is going to have, it says, a fixed and a tail Doppler, so, and they're going to be measuring the surface to 10,000 feet. They're going to be measuring the lowest layers of the atmosphere. So as we start to do more of these Erin updates coming in, we're going to be able to show you in real time where those Hurricane Hunter planes are. What are they seeing for the pressure of the storm? What are the winds doing? And they fly in different patterns depending on what each mission is entailed. What is their mission? Are they looking at the low levels? Are they looking at the high levels? They fly different axes along the hurricane path or the tropical storm path. Of note as well, we are also watching another area in the Bay of Campeche with potential for development. This does not have a high chance of development, but this invest has a 20% chance over the next 7 days, and over the next 2 days, it's moving across the Bay of Campeche into the Western Gulf, and that'll be something that could bring some heavy rainfall there as it moves inland in northeastern Mexico and also into Brownsville. So again, that's probably not going to become a named system, but the next name on the list is Fernand. This is our list of hurricane names. Remember, the only new name that was not repeated from 6 years ago was Dexter. Now, as we look at Erin, we're also looking at other tropical waves that will come later this month off the west coast of Africa. In big picture, we see these waves coming off the west coast of Africa late August into September timeframe. A couple different favored paths the second half of the month for development. We can see them moving up here, hugging the east coast, which is kind of like where we're watching Erin for development. Also, we can see some systems that move into the Caribbean and out into the Gulf. So those are things that we look at ever so closely near to the peak of hurricane season, which is September 10th. So on our tropical timeline, we are right now August 14th, nearly August 15th, and I just want to show you mid-August, here it is right here. Look at how these charts go skyrocketing. We are getting into the most active weeks historically in hurricane season. So Erin, we are watching closely and watching other systems that may follow Erin coming off the coast of Africa. Now, if you are joining us on YouTube, I also want to point out, for more Erin coverage, plus our local forecast here in North Georgia and Metro Atlanta, we're actually streaming on Weather Impact 24/7, which is a feature on 11 Alive Plus. So if you're watching us on YouTube, I want to let you know more live updates on Erin. You can catch those on Weather Impact 24/7. That is downloadable for free on your TV. Just search 11 Alive Plus in your app store and you can watch us there for more coverage of Erin. We have constantly looping satellite radar imagery of tropical systems as they make landfall, and also the local forecast here in North Georgia. Thank you so much for joining us on this special coverage of Tropical Storm Erin. Our next update from the Hurricane Center coming in at 5 o'clock today. We'll be featuring that here and also on 11 Alive News.